Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're diving into a recap of the romance manga Unrequited Love Matchmaking. If you love dramatic love stories, awkward first dates, and sweet moments that make your heart melt, you're definitely in the right place. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more recaps like this. All right, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's jump into the story. The story begins in a hospital where a surgery is currently taking place, watched by several young people. One of them said that the person lying on the operating table should probably be sent to a genetics lab because it's hard to believe that an ordinary human could survive something that horrific. The other one, who was also working, didn't respond at all. He was far too focused on what he was doing. The one who had just spoken glanced at the girl standing behind them because he noticed something strange. He looked at her because even through her mask, it was obvious that she was staring at someone in fascination, quietly whispering to herself that he was incredible. He asked where exactly she was looking, since she was supposed to be here for training and this wasn't the time to get distracted. But after a moment, he decided not to bother with it and just finish the job as quickly as possible. The man operating the device said that it really was worth it. The work had been excellent. When another man, also dressed in the same medical suit that made them all look almost identical, started walking away, the girl couldn't take her eyes off him, thinking that he looked charming even in that outfit. It almost felt hard to breathe whenever he approached or walked past. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, beating to some new rhythm. Looking into his dark, captivating eyes, the girl hoped that he at least remembered her. But he didn't look at her that way. His gaze was simple and distant, just like looking at a colleague, a stranger, a student who came here to learn. There wasn't the slightest hint of recognition. The man addressed the one operating the device. His name was Cha-bong-pal. After a short pause, he walked forward, past the girl, and then added what he had meant to say. Next time, the interns shouldn't be placed in the corner, because they can't see anything properly from there. How are they supposed to become surgeons like that? He continued talking about attentiveness, but the girl didn't hear any of it. She felt upset that he hadn't recognized her, even though she knew it had been unlikely. Suddenly, a stern voice snapped her out of her thoughts, addressing both of them. Cha-bong-pal thanked them for their work and said it was time for them to leave. And that's exactly what they did. But once they stepped outside, the girl had already forgotten everything she was supposed to learn today and started searching for him with her eyes. When she finally found him, she stared at him openly. In case you haven't guessed yet, yes, the main heroine is in love with him. She considered him her ideal, which wasn't surprising at all because he was incredibly handsome. The main heroine, Kang-ja, who was already 26 years old, wanted to specialize in cardiac surgery and was currently working as an intern. Cho Do-jun, who was the same age, replied that in case she didn't know, there had been no official recruitment for that department this year. The guy said he found it hard to believe that she was choosing her specialization because of some guy. The girl replied that he had no right to judge her since he was also going there because Dr. Ki Tae-o was his role model, although he immediately cut her off, claiming that wasn't true. The guy said that the doctor looked at him like he wanted to kill him. How could anyone choose surgery because of someone like that? The girl reminded him that either way, they wouldn't be able to avoid it, so there was no point arguing. She considered her friend a liar because he had clearly been impressed by Ki Tae-o's skills and was now acting embarrassed like a child. Cho Do-jun said he wanted to grab something to eat, and the heroine reminded him that their friend Bora was already waiting for them with fried chicken and beer. Unfortunately for him, he had the night shift, which meant he'd be eating alone tonight. The heroine laughed and said she knew. That's exactly why she mentioned the chicken and beer, and then quickly ran away. The guy practically exploded with frustration. What kind of unfairness was that? And she was even mocking him. But that definitely wasn't her problem, because she was lucky enough to stuff herself with chicken tonight. Kibora told her friend that even if Ki Tae-o, who, by the way, was her stepbrother, looked like some kind of mythical god in her eyes, that didn't mean she should spend half an hour talking about nothing but him. The girl then revealed that her brother was actually going on a blind date today, so her friend should just forget about him. She also reminded her that Kangjia didn't even know him personally and seemed to forget what kind of family they belonged to. Both Ki Tae-o and Gibora were heirs to a hospitality conglomerate that owned dozens of famous hotels. The current director of the company had 3 wives and, accordingly, 3 children. Bora was the youngest of them. While her friend was complaining that her family was a disaster, the heroine was secretly thinking that if she ever became Ki Tae-o's wife, they would actually become relatives. And you know what? Only now did it finally hit her drunken mind that today, her beloved was going on a date. Bora explained that her brother hadn't even resisted the arrangement, and the girl he was meeting was the daughter of a powerful tycoon, so it was a very good match. Since her friend looked upset, Bora suggested they go take a look at the girl who might marry the man of her dreams. Basically, she was suggesting that they spy on them, together. The heroine took another sip of beer, remembering that she was supposed to keep her love a secret. But her heart simply couldn't let him fall into another woman's hands. Bora loved missions like this, so she happily led her friend to the right place. She confidently introduced her friend to the bartender and told him to treat her with respect. Bora also whispered in his ear that he should completely forget he had ever seen them here today. Then, to the heroine's surprise, she stood up and said she had to run, wishing her friend good luck. The girl couldn't believe she had been betrayed like that, but Bora winked and said she had business to take care of. Not even her promise to stay was enough to stop her from leaving. And just to escape before Kangjia could scold her, she suddenly pointed somewhere and said she could see her brother. But there was only some random guy there who looked nothing like Ki Tae-o. Just as the heroine was about to say something to her friend, she realized there was already no one there. That brat tricked her again. Twice! The heroine picked a seat, and from there watched the beautiful woman sitting by the window, assuming that must be the one. It would be hard not to admit that such an elegant lady was probably waiting for him. What did Bora say again? The daughter of a tycoon. This woman definitely looked the part. By the way, Dr. Tae-o was here too. She heard his familiar voice apologizing for being late. She immediately lowered her head so she wouldn't be noticed, so she didn't see that he actually looked even better now than he did in his doctor's coat. He usually smelled only of deodorant, but now she thought she could catch the scent of cologne. And it smelled good. Peeking out from her hiding spot, the girl could see only his back. Had his shoulders always been that broad that you couldn't see anything past them? He sat down at the table, which made spying difficult since she couldn't see anything behind him. The girl really didn't want to lose him, even though he had never actually belonged to her. It's just that she had liked him for so long. She didn't even know what to do, since she had never once spoken to him. People had already started glancing at the strange girl. After calming down a bit, the heroine decided to just observe, because things might not work out between them anyway. When she peeked out again, she saw an extremely strange scene. That lady was sitting alone and looking directly into the heroine's eyes. And suddenly someone appeared right in front of her and spoke. It was him! Amazingly, he even knew her name. The man suddenly asked if she had been waiting for him long. The heroine found it hard to think clearly because he suddenly said something like that, and she wasn't exactly sober either. The man said he would finish this silly date soon and come back. Kangjia replied that she would be waiting. She adapted to the unexpected situation surprisingly fast. She blushed when he suddenly did something unexpected. More specifically, Ki Tae-o, the very man she had been in love with for so long, kissed her on the forehead. In fact, the idea that he would kiss her started about 10 minutes earlier, when Ms. Anne nervously bit her finger, worried he might not show up. She was extremely nervous, pacing back and forth while waiting for him with hope. It would have been easier if he had just arrived already. Then she heard someone arrive behind her. She froze as she turned around to see who it was. And it was him. That same doctor had arrived. Everyone greeted him. It seemed like everyone there breathed a sigh of relief that he had come after all. But the woman felt fear when this man arrived. Her heart started pounding harder in her chest. The doctor said, rather threateningly, that she was standing in the middle of the way and blocking the entrance. She remembered a conversation where another man had asked why she thought the guy had become a doctor. He had said it was naive to think the guy truly wanted to save people. Nonsense. That man claimed the guy had become a doctor because he planned to remove someone from this world. That was the real answer. The woman understood why the chairman had been so irritated. After all, the guy had once told him that once he became a doctor, he would stop his heart himself. Suddenly, Ki Tae-o asked if Ms. Anne knew martial arts. The woman didn't understand what he meant. The man leaned closer and said that if she wasn't planning to seize the chairman's bedroom by force, she should accept the scraps she was given and disappear. He asked if she had even thought about how she would deal with the old foxes in that family, because they were clearly far beyond her abilities. The secretary was shocked. How did he know? She had thought he was too focused on the hospital to care about the family affairs. When Ki Tae-o was almost past her, he said over his shoulder that she should report everything about this date, because he didn't want any trouble. After that, he met her, the woman he was supposed to have the date with. But when he started talking to her, he suddenly noticed another familiar face in the room. Kang-jia from the hospital was there too, hiding behind her hand, red as a beet. Seeing her, he thought it was a bit too much. I mean, she chased after him at the hospital, and now she showed up here too? Sitting down at the table, the man introduced himself as Ki Tae-o. The girl said he looked even better than in his photos. At first he said she did too, but then he immediately got to the point. This whole circus needed to end. She smiled and said that was funny. She nudged his leg with her foot and commented that he looked pretty strong. She had apparently decided to flirt a little. The man joked that he was probably tasty for her. She agreed, but then mentioned she had heard rumors that he was impotent. The man asked if that was what she had really wanted to find out, and smiling, the girl said something like that. He pushed his chair back and said he had also heard rumors that she slept around with anyone, so he had been curious to see what kind of person she was. Then, as a final note, he said that, by the way, he already had a girlfriend. You could say he used Kang-jia as a scapegoat. He kissed her on the forehead as if she were his girlfriend. To the girl who was already red with anger, he said that she could take the kiss as proof of his words. Then he smiled with satisfaction as he glanced at the woman who had been set up on the date with him. Furious, she bit her lip, called him a bastard, and quickly stormed out. That was exactly the result Ki Tae-o had wanted. The heroine, completely shocked by the situation, even stood up. Meanwhile, he simply watched the brunette's figure as she walked away. Then the man turned back to her and seriously asked what she was even doing here. The girl quickly remembered her friend and said that since Bora was here, she had come to see her. The man smiled and replied that he had assumed she came for him, not for his half-sister. He said it with such cunning in his voice that it sounded more like a fact than a guess. Ki Tae-o turned serious again and asked if she really liked him. Blushing, she asked how he even knew that. I mean, she hadn't said anything, and Bora probably hadn't either. The man simply replied that it was actually obvious. She just couldn't see it from the outside, which wasn't surprising. Ki Tae-o said she must have heard what that woman had said earlier, so it would be better for her to give up those feelings. It was all nonsense anyway. Surprised, she suddenly asked him, loud enough for the whole street to hear, if he was really impotent. She didn't mean to. She just spoke without thinking. He angrily told the truth, that yes, he was impotent. People immediately started whispering about it. With tears in her eyes, she replied that if that was the only problem, then she wouldn't give up. She had no intention of quitting. She crouched down and said she would keep his secret until the day she died, forgetting that she had just shouted about it across the street. He became interested in the conversation, and the girl continued, saying she could help him with his dates. She assumed it must be unpleasant to have to tell such a terrible truth about himself. So she suggested a slightly less terrible way to get rid of those women. Almost heroically, she declared that she was willing to be his girlfriend. The man looked at her suspiciously and asked what she would even gain from that. She answered simply, she just wanted to keep loving him from afar, without bothering him, quietly enjoying the chance to look at him. She looked at him with puppy dog eyes, silently begging him to agree. The man smiled. After all, the rumor wasn't real. It was fake. He had started it himself. And now, someone had actually fallen for it. And since it amused him, the man agreed. By the way, he also asked how the child was doing. How did he know about the child? 3 years earlier, during his residency, he had attended a lecture given by Park Bong-chun. That was when he first saw her, Kang Jia. She had been holding a baby in her arms. He still remembered how absorbed she was in the lecture, despite the judgmental looks from others. For a while, her name had been circulating around. A single mother with a secret crush. An interesting girl. By the way, when he asked about the child, she didn't get embarrassed at all. It turned out his name was Jaemin, and she even offered to show a photo. But Ki Tae-o didn't want to look at it, which made her a little disappointed. He suggested they keep their agreement a secret for now, and the girl nodded like a soldier following orders. Just before leaving, he called out to her again. The man thanked her, since thanks to her he had managed to avoid making a scene. She was happy to be helpful, so she smiled and said so. When the man returned, the secretary Anne asked who that girl had been. The man casually replied that since she had seen everything anyway, she might as well tell the old man. He said the girl was his beloved girlfriend. He even asked her to pass along that he had serious intentions toward her. The only question was whether she had actually believed him. In other words, did the girl really believe that he was impotent? Meanwhile, the heroine was simply happy that she had the chance to protect the secret of the man she loved. After everything that happened, the girl returned home, where her mother was already waiting for her. And the same little child Ki Tae-o had asked about was there too. It turned out he was actually her younger brother. She loved her little brother Jaemin very much and immediately rushed into his arms. Kissing his cheeks, the heroine said the little guy had no idea who she had met today. She described him as a man she loved very, very much. The man of her dreams, you could say. The boy was surprised when he heard the word dream. It caught his attention, but their sweet moment was interrupted by a male voice telling the girl to move out of the way. It was a teenager, a young guy who didn't sound angry, just slightly annoyed. Why stand in the middle of the hallway like that? He was her other younger brother. She told him his hairstyle definitely didn't meet school standards, but the teen waved it off, saying that if your grades are good, no one cares about your hair. But the little boy pointed at him and said he went to school to play, not to study. Of course, the teenager tried to deny it, but after calling the kid a brat, he got smacked on the head. Their sister scolded him, saying he shouldn't treat his younger brother like that. He complained to their mom that his sister had hit him, but the woman simply kindly invited them all to dinner. The portion in front of them was so huge that it looked like they were about to start drooling. The older brother didn't miss the chance to complain that his sister always took all the vegetables, while the younger one excitedly wished everyone a good meal. He was clearly ready to enjoy dinner. The atmosphere at the dinner table was warm and pleasant as they chatted happily together, sharing how their day had gone. Soon, of course, the room grew quiet because everyone was busy stuffing their cheeks with the delicious food their mom had cooked. The little boy also scooped up a full spoonful of tasty food and happily shoved it into his mouth. With his mouth completely full, he asked his sister if she didn't have to go to the hospital today. The heroine smiled sweetly and said she was staying home today. The little boy was thrilled, jumped off his chair, and ran straight to her. She grabbed his hands and spun him around while the boy laughed with joy. She was also in a great mood because she was already looking forward to tomorrow. It promised to be interesting. But the next morning, she hadn't slept at all. She had thought too much and worried too much, and that was the result. One of the women working there asked if everything was okay. She looked like she might be sick or something. But the heroine explained that she had just not slept well. The woman said she was glad to hear the intern was fine, then got straight to business. She said they had an important patient, gave her the room number, and sent her there. The heroine said she understood and headed to work. But in her thoughts, she kept returning to Dr. Ki Tae-o. All she had to do was imagine him, such a tall, handsome man. She felt like she could scream with excitement right there. Even in her thoughts, he was perfect. By the way, at that moment, her friend suddenly appeared behind her. Seeing this obvious love-struck moment, he was surprised and wondered what had gotten into her head. After finishing her work, the patient had nothing but praise for her, which felt really nice. And since quite a bit of time had already passed, she decided it was probably time for a break. Her phone rang in her hand. It was Bora, texting, saying she was dying of curiosity about what had happened between them yesterday. She even said she might come over here herself. The heroine just laughed at that. Bora really knew how to cause a panic. Suddenly, her friend popped up beside her again, and it turned out he had been reading the messages Bora sent. She practically jumped in shock and told him he was completely crazy, but her friend replied that he could tell she was hiding something. Eventually, they decided to go have lunch together. They were already riding the elevator when the guy asked what Bora's messages meant. She said he didn't need to know that, but the guy told her half the explanation was written all over her face. What a nightmare. He didn't get the chance to ask more questions because Ki Tae-o stepped into the elevator. The guy greeted the doctor and introduced himself, saying he was intern Cho Do-jun. The heroine at least tried to follow his example. She said her name was Kang Jia, then stood there like she was sitting on pins and needles. He didn't even pay attention. He was simply waiting for his floor. Meanwhile, the heroine felt like a schoolgirl with butterflies fluttering in her stomach. Just in case, Cho Do-jun decided to tell her that she was acting weird, and it was obvious. He even suggested she step aside for a moment. He was whispering, but somehow it was loud enough that even if you didn't want to hear it, you would. So Ki Tae-o glanced at them. The girl told him to stop talking nonsense. Geez, he was ruining the romance. But he refused to drop it. Then the doctor said the scene looked very cute. At that moment, they both flinched and froze. They almost looked like possums playing dead, hoping the predator, well, Ki Tae-o, would ignore them. As the doctor stepped out of the elevator, he said they could have lunch together. The heroine instantly imagined a romantic lunch. That romantic fantasy shattered when Cho Do-jun was also invited by the doctor. Although, in truth, it didn't bother her that much. They bowed, thanked him, and of course her friend teased her about it, for which he immediately got smacked on the head. Later, when they were already having lunch, that same friend felt like the atmosphere was a little awkward. He remembered what everyone said about the doctor, that he was especially strict with women. But right now, it felt like the two of them were alone together, not sitting at a table with 3 people. The guy was the first to break the silence, saying he was glad to have lunch with the doctor. It even seemed like the doctor might be open to a conversation. The man explained that this was simply his way of repaying a debt to the girl. Looking at the blushing heroine, he said this was his way of thanking her for her special help. The guy was already about to ask what terrible thing she had done to the doctor, But their discussion didn't last long, because an angry Bora suddenly appeared. She was extremely unhappy that her dear friend had decided to ignore her very important messages. Soon after noticing her brother's company, Bora quickly calmed down and ordered something to eat as well. Now there were 4 people at the table. The girl looked closely at her brother and thought it was extremely unexpected to see him here with Kangjia. She was chewing almost aggressively because she simply couldn't understand how he had agreed to this group lunch. What exactly had they used to lure him here? Bora glanced at her extremely satisfied friend and silently assumed that the 2 of them were probably dating. The main heroine couldn't help noticing the growing tension across from her. She was only worried that her friend might choke on her food. Bora had already started imagining her friend as that evil daughter-in-law from melodramas, the kind who always pretends to be an angel. She got so irritated that she suddenly kicked her friend under the table, hard and with real force. Since the heroine hadn't expected it at all, she jerked so suddenly that everyone at the table turned to look at her. The girl quickly came up with an excuse, saying she had bitten the inside of her cheek so hard it even bled. That's why she jumped like that. Only Bora, who knew the truth, stuck her tongue out at her friend. Now she had taken her revenge and was in a wonderful mood. Kangjia suddenly smiled, somewhat ominously. Was that really how friends behaved? Embarrassing someone in front of the person they liked? She decided to get even, so she also kicked her under the table. Hard. But Bora remained completely serious. The girl assumed her friend was just pretending it didn't hurt, testing the heroine's patience. So she decided to keep going until her friend finally reacted. Just then, Dr. Ki Tae-o suddenly spoke up, calmly addressing Kangjia. The heroine was happy that he was calling her by name again. She responded, but immediately grew nervous. What was she supposed to do now that he had spoken to her? But what he said wasn't anything good. Calmly, he simply explained that the leg she had been pressing on was actually his. The girl immediately jumped up and said she hadn't done it on purpose and could even clean his shoes. But the man was already getting ready to leave, wishing them a good meal before going. As a final remark, the heroine shouted after him to take care of himself. That was how people said goodbye where they were from. Bora looked at her friend and said the food on her plate had been very delicious. The heroine, however, replied that she was doomed. Meanwhile, the man calmly walked out of the cafeteria, still thinking about what had just happened. But suddenly he was distracted. A male voice called out to him. It was a guy holding a cup of coffee. He waved at the doctor and asked Ki Tae-o how he was doing. Ki Tae-o greeted him with a slight bow. The man with the coffee said he had seen him buying lunch for the interns, probably trying to make the cardiothoracic surgery department look good. The guy said he was surprised Ki Tae-o had actually done something like that. He joked that the senior doctor must have finally taught him some manners. Ki Tae-o replied that it wasn't exactly like that, though he understood how it looked. He added that his department was definitely less popular than the emergency department. The guy told him the most important thing was that he had already set his sights on Kangjia, so Ki Tae-o shouldn't try to make a move on her. The doctor replied that he was happy for his colleague. The guy called Tae-o as cold as ever. Soon the colleague left and they said their goodbyes. After that encounter, the man was heading back to work. As he walked up the stairs, he found himself thinking about Kangjia. He wondered why she had stepped on his foot. Maybe she was trying to get his attention. And she kept blushing every time she saw him. He hoped she wouldn't decide to apply to their department. He concluded that the more they saw each other, the more trouble there would be. At that moment, his phone rang. It was Secretary Lim. He said he had left a message earlier that morning, but the doctor hadn't replied for a long time, so he decided to call personally to inform him that the director was waiting for him. Ki Tae-o asked if she wanted to see him right now, and the secretary confirmed, yes, right now. He asked the doctor to come to the office as soon as possible. The heroine shared with her friends the events of the previous evening, that she was now Ki Tae-o's fake girlfriend. Bora got angry and started calling her a shameless fool, but fell silent when their friend personally covered her mouth. Bora said Gia would simply be dragged to the altar, since the mother desperately wanted to marry her brother off so he wouldn't get in the way anymore. Why had the heroine agreed to this? Bora believed her friend had absolutely no idea what she was doing, or who that man's mother really was. The heroine took a sip of coffee and said it was actually quite beneficial for her. Bora quietly asked the guy next to her whether this wasn't just a simple crush, but their friend replied that the small crush had probably already turned into thoughts about marriage. The girl replied that, first of all, it wasn't his business, and secondly, she was sincerely in love. The guy said he had ignored it for a long time, but now she had crossed the line. How could Gia allow herself to get involved with a doctor like that? Their friend said she could have continued loving him quietly. Bora agreed, saying she shouldn't treat this so lightly. Men from the Ki family were hard to keep by your side. Bora added that there had been scandalous romances involving both the boy's father and his grandfather, so he would probably be the same. But people in love are blind. She quietly addressed her friend. The girl said that the doctor she knew would never behave like that. Bora, who, by the way, was Ki Tae-o's half-sister, told Dojun that this was impossible to endure. Did this girl really think she knew him better? She was doomed. Bora knew her brother had a terrible personality that he successfully hid behind a calm exterior. She imagined him as a wolf in sheep's clothing. There was nothing good about him, but sadly, she couldn't convince her friend with words. Meanwhile, after that call, Ki Tae-o did go to see the director. He had no choice but to come. He had no right to refuse. She was painting when the man spoke from behind her, remarking that she still chose very attractive assistants. He added that this new secretary, Mr. Kang, seemed quite sturdy and broad-shouldered. But there was a catch. Walking up from behind her, he said that even he probably wouldn't be able to satisfy her expectations. The woman didn't even smile. She only said that it had been a long time since they had last seen each other. When she finally turned around completely, the woman remarked that it seemed he had set his sights on an intern from the same hospital. The man wasn't surprised at all that she already knew everything. The only question was that, just as Bora had said, this woman was actually very serious and could be determined to finish whatever she had started. The woman asked if he hadn't had enough of playing doctor. Was he really planning to keep acting like a fool? She didn't like that this young man had completely gotten out of control. He kept interfering with her work and constantly protesting. Every single day it was something new. Calmly, she explained that if he wanted to inherit anything, he needed to focus on the hotel business. She also recalled her own youth. She remembered how things had been back then. She hated that man. Through tears, she wished he would burn in that damned fire. She still had a scar that had become a reminder over the years. The woman warned him that whether he liked it or not, she would introduce him to a girl from a respectable family, and more than once if she felt it was necessary. The man simply replied that there was no point in that. She should know it. But the woman answered that serious relationships could only be built with people of equal status, not with poor girls who only carried a burden of problems behind them instead of money. The woman agreed that the hospital could still remain his hobby if he wanted. But the rumors, that was the problem. She ordered him to stop them from spreading, to erase them completely and start behaving like a perfectly normal man. As for the heroine, she had finally submitted her application today. Now all that was left was to wait for the results. The guy asked if she had applied to the cardiothoracic surgery department, and she replied that she had. Then she asked him where he had applied. Dojin placed a finger over his lips and said he would keep it a secret from her for now. The heroine nudged his shoulder several times, demanding that he tell her. but the guy held his ground and refused. She didn't manage to force the answer out of him because her phone suddenly rang. It was her mom. Strange for her to be calling during work hours. Her mother asked if she was at work, and the girl replied that, of course she was. Where else would she be? Then her mother shocked her by saying that her little brother had been taken to the hospital. The patient shown next wasn't her brother. He was actually one of Ki Tae-o's patients. Park Hae-chan, a first-year resident, was reporting on his patient's condition. He was still a beginner, but it seemed he had studied his patient's current condition quite thoroughly. At the end, Ki Tae-o warned him to monitor the patient carefully to make sure arrhythmia didn't occur. A voice came over the intercom saying a doctor was needed in the emergency department. Ki Tae-o said he would go there and told the young doctor to stay here. He arrived as quickly as he could. Several doctors were already there, but they all stepped aside for him, the professional. The man frowned and said they needed to check the blood flow. They did just that and soon reported to the doctor that everything looked fine. The other two young doctors let out a sigh of relief, glad that everything had ended fairly well. As they were leaving, a colleague said it had been good work, and Ki Tae-o thanked them for their efforts. They would have continued on their way, but suddenly, both of them looked at the person running down the hospital corridor. Right in front of them, moving at an incredible speed for an intern in a lab coat, Kang Jia rushed past. She was clearly in a huge hurry. Even the colleague beside him wondered where an intern could possibly be rushing like that. Of course, he didn't know. But despite how fast she ran, he still noticed the tears streaming down her face. Nearby, standing with the consultants, was Kang Jia's mother. She was holding the heroine's little brother in her arms. Both of them turned at the loud sound behind them. The heroine had called out to them. When the boy turned around, there was a visible redness on his cheek. The girl immediately took her little brother from her mother's arms. He asked his sister not to cry, while the woman explained that he had fallen off a slide and said his stomach hurt. Kang Jia asked her mom to go register him and explained that she would stay with her brother in the meantime. The girl at the registration desk asked if Kang Jia knew the boy, and she explained that she was his sister. The receptionist was surprised that the boy was so much younger than her, but she promised to find them a free room as quickly as possible. They entered the room, and the same girl asked how old he was. When she heard he was only 3 years old, she was surprised by how clearly he spoke. The girl soon left them, saying the doctor would come shortly and that they just needed to wait a little. The heroine carefully approached the boy and touched his stomach. She asked if she could take a look, but he curled up and hissed that it hurt when she touched it. Then the girl heard someone enter and turned around to look. It was Dr. Ki Tae-o, who asked her why she was even there. The boy answered instead of her, saying that she was his sister. The heroine almost threw herself at the doctor when he said they would examine him now. As he put on his stethoscope, Ki Tae-o asked the boy if he knew what it was. Jamin smiled happily and said he did. He named the object and explained that doctors put it on the chest and listen. Ki Tae-o said he was a smart boy and asked if he could listen to him too. He obediently said that was fine, while his sister lifted up his shirt. As the doctor placed the stethoscope against his stomach, the boy complained to his sister that it hurt. Kang Jia pulled herself together and told him she was right there, so he didn't need to be afraid. But he had to explain exactly where and what hurt. Soon, Ki Tae-o said that it seemed nothing serious had happened, just some bruising. However, he recommended getting an ultrasound. The woman said that was a huge relief for her, and together with her son, they thanked the doctor. He only looked more closely at the woman's face and at her son. He wasn't even listening to what she was saying anymore. She was probably sincerely thanking him or explaining something. At that moment, he remembered Kang Jia. It seemed like she actually looked much more like Jamin. And besides, why would she bring her brother to her classes if he had a mother? That was strange. So the man decided to ask the woman about it before she went home. Quite seriously, He asked the woman whether Jaemin was really her biological son. The woman didn't answer. Instead, slightly surprised, she asked why a doctor would ask her such a question. Ki Tae-o wasn't intimidated by the mother's counter-question. He said he was just asking out of curiosity. There was no hidden meaning behind it. Just then, Bora joined them. She said that there had once been rumors that Kang Jia was a single mother because the girl had brought Jaemin to lectures a few times. After explaining the meaning of the question to Kang Jia's mother, Bora thought to herself that she never would have believed anyone could actually take such rumors seriously. The friend asked the boy how he was feeling. He knew her and said he felt fine. Then Bora turned to her brother with clear dissatisfaction and asked why he was the one examining Jaemin. Ki Tae-o didn't understand what the problem was, but the woman had just realized who exactly was standing in front of her. Suddenly, she understood that this was the doctor her daughter had mentioned in her stories. Bora must be his younger sister. She had heard that too. The mother even thought that this young man looked very much like Jaemin's father when he was younger, almost identical. Dr. Ki bowed and apologized for the misunderstanding, and the woman smiled and explained that late-born children sometimes confuse people. The boy in her arms looked up at his mom when she mentioned a late-born child, because he didn't understand what that meant. The woman added that the doctor should definitely take good care of her. Ki Tae-o asked what exactly she meant. She explained that although Jia might seem a little wild, it only appeared that way. In reality, she was extremely talented and a very good girl. The doctor simply smiled and nodded. He remembered the intern and concluded that she looked a lot like her mother. The man told the woman that Jia was actually one of the best interns there. He added that she was truly unique and had her own special approach. The woman smiled. She was proud of her daughter. The profession of a doctor wasn't easy, and she was being praised by Dr. Ki Tae-o himself. Only Bora stood there with her mouth slightly open in shock. She couldn't understand what had gotten into him. That evening, the doctor decided to have dinner with his friends. Pak Bonpa, speaking with his mouth full, said that Ki Tae-o should probably explain a few things to them. The man honestly replied that he didn't understand what Bonpa was talking about. What exactly was he supposed to explain? Pak Bong-chun told Cha Bom-pa to explain what they meant. He said that this year, they had been forced to review 3 applications. It was surprising that anyone even wanted to join surgery at all. Cha Bong-pa asked for the reason, and the colleagues said that Dr. Ki Tae-o had allowed interns to observe a surgery and had even treated them to lunch. Tae-o thought to himself that this was another misunderstanding, but he didn't even feel like trying to explain anything to them. Park Bong-chun slapped his colleague on the shoulder and said that the senior doctor should learn a thing or two from Ki Tae-o. The head of the department said that if Ki Tae-o was feeding interns, he might as well use his card. The man suddenly realized that those two had actually submitted applications to their department, and they had even been accepted. Could it be that Kang Jia and that friend of hers would now constantly be somewhere nearby? He decided this was a complete mess. By the way, the heroine hadn't gotten there by accident. She had studied very hard. After a while, her phone rang and distracted her. It was her friend, telling her to come outside quickly. The girl let out a heavy sigh and said she was actually studying. But the guy replied that, in that case, he would drag her out of the house by force. Dojin, who was standing right under her window, waved to the heroine when she looked out. In his hands was a bag of beer, which he proudly showed her. Now she simply couldn't refuse and promised she would come down right away. In the room, Bora was sleeping. The heroine decided to invite her to come out too. But since her friend was sleeping soundly, the heroine decided not to wake her. They could drink that beer together another time. Kang Jia smiled at her. She looked so cute when she wasn't grumbling under her breath. The heroine threw on a scarf and a jacket. And once she settled on the bench with her can, she said that nighttime beer was wonderful. Dojin asked the girl where she had lost Bora, because he had actually expected all of them to be there. The heroine said her friend had fallen asleep. Then she asked him why he had suddenly called her out here. He didn't answer right away. He just let out a heavy sigh, as if something was weighing on his heart. After a moment, he said he was nervous because he couldn't focus on studying. The girl guessed that he had probably fallen in love. And she was right. He suddenly got serious and turned completely red. The heroine asked if she knew the girl. The girl started listing the girls she knew, but Dojin said it didn't matter. The heroine seriously replied that she wouldn't ask any more questions. But then she added that she hoped he wasn't hinting at her. He suddenly addressed her by name in a serious tone, as if he was about to say something truly important. But instead, frowning, he told her not to get ahead of herself. He even tugged her hair and scolded her, saying she was being way too bold with her assumptions. But they were suddenly interrupted by an unexpected nighttime guest. Dr. Ki Tae-o had come there as well. The heroine couldn't believe he was actually real. She covered her face with her hand because she wasn't wearing any makeup, and, thanks to Dojun, her hair was all messy. Ki Tae-o asked what they were doing there, jokingly suggesting it looked like a date. Dojun replied that it wasn't, they were just drinking beer. Then, somewhat unexpectedly, the doctor asked if he could join them. Dojun said sure, and even offered to run and grab some beer for him. Dr. Ki Tae-o sat down next to the heroine, and the two of them were left alone. He touched her hair, but the girl suddenly pushed his hand away. The doctor looked surprised and asked if she reacted like that only with him. The girl was still covering her face with her hand when the man suddenly asked if her friend already knew. Smiling, he asked if Dojun knew that they were dating. The girl looked at him nervously. Then she seemed to snap out of a trance and jerked slightly. As if it had just dawned on her, she said that he must be talking about their fake relationship. The heroine honestly admitted that she had, of course, told her friend. She added teasingly that he had even been jealous that she was closer to the doctor than he was. The man suddenly became more serious. He said he understood. Then he abruptly stood up, as if he were about to leave. He said he was heading out and that he'd just drink by himself. In the end, he gloomily wished them a good night. The girl was surprised that his mood had changed so suddenly. Maybe he was angry that she had told someone about their relationship. It felt like he had changed in just a second, as if a few of her words had struck him right in the heart, even though she hadn't said anything wrong. The heroine felt sad that she had upset him without even knowing how. Just then, Dojun finally came back. He held up the bag and proudly said he had bought the best beer. But when he looked up, he noticed the heroine was sitting alone. He asked Kang-ja why their nighttime guest had already left. She didn't answer. But Dojun thought that, even though she had just been talking about a fake relationship, now she was sitting there sad, probably because she had been rejected. Sitting there with her scarf, Kang-ja looked like an abandoned princess. The next morning, the chief doctor was scolding two others because they had absolutely no idea how to stitch properly. One of the two even got smacked on the head and was called an idiot. The guy protested and asked what he had just been hit for. The doctor said even a blind person could see that the guy's hands were shaking, so he must have come to work hungover. He got hit on the head several more times, while the doctor behind him shouted that this was unacceptable. While he had been on the night shift, the guy had been drinking. The guy protested again and said they couldn't treat them like that now that new interns had arrived. The doctor said that two of those interns actually knew what real work was. The guy asked what about the third one. The doctor simply looked at the guy he had just been hitting. When several nurses saw a certain man, they began whispering quietly and discussing him. He was also an intern, the third one they had just been talking about. The girl said he was the worst of the three interns who had been accepted. Meanwhile, the heroine was delighted by the message she had received. She had been accepted into the department. She said it was actually wonderful, because now she would get to see the doctor more often. Standing beside her, Dojun quietly added that he had also been accepted. She told her friend that the two of them, along with Bora, should celebrate. The guy agreed with the idea and said he would text in their group chat right away. Just then, the third intern appeared behind them and asked if they would also be in cardiothoracic surgery. The two of them turned toward Han Dong-yu, surprised that he had applied there as well. The intern smiled with satisfaction and said he hadn't just applied, he had been accepted. Finally, he added that now, as colleagues, they would have to do their best. When the guy walked out, the female lead slammed her hand on the table and said that if he ran away again, she'd strangle him with her own hands. Dojun supported her, because this Han Dong-gyu was a master at running away from responsibility. Everyone in the hospital knew he did absolutely nothing. The female lead tried to work with him, but that rat kept disappearing all the time. He was driving her absolutely crazy. When they were doing their neurosurgery rotation, they always had problems because of that jerk. The female lead said that if he pulled something like that again, he might not make it out alive. Dojun laughed and said he was actually curious about something. He asked if Ki Tae-o and such a lazy intern like Han Dong-gyu would be able to coexist normally. You see, the question was perfectly logical, because Dr. Ki Tae-o was serious and hardworking, and Dong-gyu was his complete opposite. Imagining their clashes, Dojun laughed. But the girl actually started thinking about it seriously. When her friend mentioned Ki Tae-o, she remembered that he had been angry yesterday. She wondered if he was still upset. That evening, the man decided to visit Bora's place. He had been receiving messages with apologies, promising they'd try to hurry. Bora herself had called and said they needed to have a serious talk, and now she was running late. Since he knew the password, he went inside. When he walked in, he thought the place would be messier, like it had been when they were kids. While waiting for his sister, he figured he might as well rest. It had been a long time since he had just relaxed. So while he waited, it was the perfect chance. He slept for quite a while and only woke up when his phone started ringing and woke him. His head was buzzing a little from the short nap, but it still felt nice just to sleep. As soon as he woke up, he checked what time it was. As soon as he came to his senses a bit, he immediately realized something was wrong. Someone nearby started talking, and to his genuine surprise, he saw Gang Ja right next to him. She was sitting on the floor, asleep, leaning against the couch. She was talking in her sleep, saying something about a doctor, so it wasn't hard to guess that her dream was about him. As it turned out, everything had started 2 hours earlier. She came home exhausted and wanted to rest as soon as possible. But to her surprise, she noticed someone's shoes at the entrance. Men's shoes, judging by the look and size. It was unlikely that Bora had invited someone over, since she wasn't even home. So the female lead assumed that a stranger was in their apartment. The girl was ready to defend herself with an umbrella, protecting the apartment she shared with Bora. Walking around the apartment, she nervously hoped to see a thief or a maniac. Where could he even be hiding? Then she saw him on the couch. She got so scared, she almost screamed. Did someone really break into their home just to lie down on their couch? Why would anyone even do that? She raised her hand as she approached the man. Since it was dark, it took her a few seconds to realize she recognized him. The female lead wondered why he had fallen asleep in their apartment. Did he not know that she and Bora lived together? Probably not, otherwise he wouldn't have walked in so calmly. Still, it wasn't so bad that she saw him again. The girl blushed, feeling the intimacy of the moment. She sat down on the floor beside him and set the umbrella aside. Even in his sleep, Dr. Ki Tae-o looked wonderful. I mean, how could she possibly miss a moment like this? Now she had the chance to just sit there and admire him, and no one would say a thing to her. That's exactly how she ended up falling asleep. She came home exhausted and couldn't stop looking at him, so she just drifted off. Looking at Kangjia, the man thought she was hopeless, falling asleep right there while sitting next to him. Despite how crazy she sometimes seemed, moments like this made him realize she genuinely liked him. That brought a smile to his face. He even remembered that she had agreed to date him despite all the gossip. She was sleeping so peacefully that it would have felt wrong to touch her. Annoying, sure, but he had to admit she was cute. Then the man gently took a strand of her hair and brought it to his nose, inhaling. He thought her hair smelled nice. Right then, the female lead purred, or something very close to it. It seemed that when he touched her hair, she started waking up. Now the man was glad he'd at least have a chance to find out what she was doing here. Now she finally woke up completely and looked at the man she loved once again. The girl jumped away from him so suddenly that even he was surprised. She explained that she had come home, saw him there, and somehow just dozed off. Now Ki Tae-o asked why she was here, and the girl said that he probably didn't know, but she actually lived here too. The man said that explained why she had also been nearby the previous evening. The girl turned on the lights, and Ki Tae-o apologized for intruding. He said he had actually thought his sister lived alone. The female lead said it was nothing serious, and then turned to him again. She clearly wanted to ask something. She nervously fidgeted with her fingers, as if she was embarrassed to speak. Then she lowered her gaze guiltily and asked hesitantly if he was upset that she had told people about their fake relationship. The man replied that it wasn't like that. He didn't really care, but at the hospital it would be better not to shout about it on every corner. The female lead brightened up and said she had only told 2 friends, Bora and Dojun. She was basically fishing for praise since she hadn't upset him. The man actually did praise her, and then Kangjia asked if he had come to see Bora. He answered that, yeah, that's right. Then Kangjia decided to call her friend. The female lead asked when she'd be home. Bora said she was stuck in traffic and it was total chaos out there. Just as the girl wanted to say that they'd be getting a guest, she saw a message saying her brother was at their place. Bora practically screamed in shock that her brother had come to their home. The female lead just smiled, and she made sure it was loud enough for the phone to pick up, as much as possible. Now Bora, hearing her laugh, got even more worried. Her friend turned to Kanja, trying to make her listen carefully to what Bora was saying. But her friend had already freaked out. Now Bora really feared they might fall for each other. She knew the girl liked her brother, but she didn't want her to cross the line. Because if she got involved with the Ki family, it'd be pure hell. Meanwhile, the man was sitting on the couch like he owned the place. He asked the female lead what his sister had said. The female lead told him that Bora would be late because she was caught in traffic. The man exhaled heavily and said that, if that was the case, he'd better head out. Meanwhile, the female lead was gazing at him in awe, thinking about what she should do now. She thought to herself that the man she was in love with was right here, in front of her, in her home, no less. And it was just the 2 of them, even dozing off together. She couldn't just let him go, losing this one chance. She had to come up with something, fast. She decided not to let him leave, so she grabbed him by the shirt. He looked at her in surprise. What else could she want from him? The female lead said she could make some noodles. Then she asked if he'd like to have dinner at their place. Yeah, this time she really pulled out all the courage she had. And he even smiled at that suggestion. That smile was a good sign of agreement. So the girl went off to cook, her face absolutely radiant with happiness. She knew she shouldn't overthink things. She knew it was just dinner, nothing more. But her heart kept tossing up all kinds of extra thoughts. She imagined that after a delicious dinner, or maybe instead of it, he might decide that Kangjia, just an intern, would become his long-awaited dessert. When her thoughts probably went too far and she felt like she was overdoing it, the female lead practically screamed. Even though she had overthought a bit, it was nice to imagine. Maybe someday their relationship would really reach a whole new level? After she'd overthought things, Ki Tae-o came up to her and asked what exactly she was doing and if she even knew how to cook. He told her to step aside a little and took the pot from her. The female lead was surprised and asked if he was going to cook himself. In the end, he told her not to interfere and to go sit down. In his eyes, she looked like a little puppy wagging its tail, silently saying that if he needed help, he could call her. The man just nodded, and only then did she say she'd go sit so as not to get in the way. No matter that the guest was cooking in her house. He looked at her and smiled, thinking that she really was a unique, unstoppable girl. And now she left him alone. Later, when he personally called her over, the female lead was genuinely surprised at how much and how deliciously he had cooked. She thanked him and wished him a good meal. After a hard day, this dinner was a dream. By the way, he was following the recipe she had given, so in essence, it was also his first time trying it. The female lead happily asked if the food was tasty. She was glad that the man she loved had cooked using her father's recipe. The man summed it up, saying it really was delicious. The female lead gave him a thumbs up and said it was her father's recipe. After chewing his food, the man said he had a question for Kang-jia. Kang-jia froze with her chopsticks in hand, feeling the mood shift slightly. Then he asked about her application. Why did she choose their cardiac surgery department? He hoped it wasn't just because he worked there. But the girl seriously said that she really wanted to become a cardiac surgeon. That was her goal when she entered university. The man exhaled in satisfaction. Good. It wasn't because of him. Well, she wouldn't have admitted it if it really were because of him, but he could read her answer in her eyes. And he was certain. After they finished dinner, the female lead thanked him for the delicious meal. In his mind, Dr. Ki Tae-o compared her to a happy little puppy. She really did look like one. When they got up, the man started gathering the dirty dishes, probably planning to clean up by himself. Kang-jia squeaked and said she could clean up herself. It felt weird. He cooked, and now he's cleaning up, even though he was technically the guest. But the man cut her off, saying she would just get in the way, so there was no point in helping. Better to just sit. He didn't even let her protest, telling her to sit and stay put. The female lead watched him and told herself mentally to stop overthinking. Just dinner together. That's all. But honestly, she hadn't really expected much before either. Maybe she hoped, dreamed a little, but didn't expect anything. It all just kind of unfolded naturally. What bothered her was that the more time they spent together, the greedier she got for it. At first, just looking at him was enough. But now, well, her thoughts were all over the place. She didn't even notice that he had already cleaned up and grabbed his jacket to leave. She squeaked again and jumped up, asking if he was really going to go. When he said yes, she felt a little sad. It sucked that she'd spent so little time with him. He was already putting on his shoes. Looks like he wasn't planning to wait for Bora anymore tonight. At the last moment, the main heroine suddenly shouted that she'd be diligent. He asked what exactly she meant. She went on, saying that if he ever needed cover for a date, she'd always make time. Seems like she really wanted to be useful, especially for him. He quietly repeated her words, as if tasting each syllable. Cover, huh? Was she really ready for this? Suddenly, her mood shifted. It was like he got mad or something, and he reached out to her. She even thought maybe she'd gone too far, crossed some personal boundary. Bora had told her before that her brother never really had luck with women. Any women. He had even almost hurt his sister over a mistake. Kangjia didn't even want to think that he might hit her now. But he just touched her cheek. Then, to her genuine surprise, he kissed her gently. Like they really were dating, and this was just a routine goodbye kiss. A few seconds later, blushing, he said he shouldn't have added onion to the food if he was going to kiss her anyway. He carefully reached for her face again and stroked her cheek. From her cheek, his finger traced down to her lips, and he said he was grateful to Kangjia for finally becoming his girlfriend. Giving her a sweet little smile for goodbye, he wished her a good night. Leaving, Ki Tae-o didn't go immediately. He leaned against the apartment door and placed his hand on his face. Covering his face with his hand, his lips stretched into a smile. In his mind, he compared himself to a high school boy falling in love for the first time. Kangjia had truly enchanted him. Around that time, Bora finally got back. She was glad to be home after such a long, tiring trip. She didn't expect to run into her brother, so she got startled and loudly asked what he was still doing there. Ki Tae-o walked past her and told her to just be quiet. He added, as an afterthought, that she should call him in the morning. As soon as she got home, Bora angrily shouted across the apartment, asking if something had happened between them. But this time, it wasn't her brother who scared her nearly to death. It was her friend. She freaked out because Kangjia was lying on the floor, almost lifeless, and red as a tomato. Bora dropped to her knees before her because the girl seemed to melt away. She was saying something about onions, something completely incomprehensible. Bora couldn't believe that her brother actually thanked her for now dating him. She couldn't even imagine such a thing. She asked what happened next, and the main heroine's hand touched her face. The girl who had been chewing froze. The main heroine said that he had wished her a good night. Bora even spat out the food she had in her cheeks. Bora said that while it was amazing, the smile with which the main heroine repeated it was disgusting. The love-struck girl asked her friend what she didn't like about the smile. Her friend said it was the ultimate grossness, that Kangjia had gone crazy while in love. And she didn't deny it. She remembered the look on his face when he talked about the onion. It was so sweet. Bora muttered that a relationship between her brother and her best friend was really weird and kinda gross. The main heroine ignored that and, as if remembering something, turned to her friend. Kangjia asked if they'd meet at the hotel today. Bora said yes, so she and Do-jun should come earlier. Kangjia asked how it would go, and Bora asked her to clarify what she meant. Then the main heroine clarified that she meant how the family evening would go. Bora exhaled heavily and smiled nervously. Since the question was rhetorical, she asked how her friend thought it would go. She told her best friend that it would be gross. At the family evening, all the women and their kids would gather. Of course, Bora, Ki Tae-o, and another brother would be there. And in front of them, in the main seat, sat their father, the head of the family. He asked when Ki Tae-o would finally leave the hospital. He knew his father would return to this conversation. He knew it, but it didn't make it any more pleasant. The father said enough was enough, and that his son had already tested his patience. Ki Tae-o, who was used to this, said nothing. But his brother spoke up. The guy's name was Ki Tae-young, the second son of the Ki family. He said he was sure his brother had a plan. He said he'd been carefully monitoring things at the hotel, and Bora had helped him. It wasn't hard to figure out that the woman with the same light hair was their mother. She smiled proudly when her son spoke. The father interrupted Tae-young, saying that although ambition seemed to exist, he couldn't do anything properly. Ki Tae-young was surprised and went quiet. He even flinched when his father spoke. He wanted to make himself look good, but in the end, he just messed up. The man shouted in anger that he had trusted him with that damn contract, and the son probably decided to do everything the wrong way again. The elder man said his blood pressure even rose when he saw the L Hotel CEO. Ki Tae-young said this time he'd handle everything. They had even discussed the contract. But now the father was upset that his son had interrupted him. He called him a brat, and the mother lowered her head, ashamed of her own son. Not long ago, she had been proud of him. Now Ki Tae-o's mother smiled. She felt it was only fair that her husband put the middle son in his place. Then the father turned back to the eldest son and reminded him that he had asked a question and was waiting for an answer. Ki Tae-o calmly said that no one knew, not even him. He seemed unsure of his own strength. The man said seriously that first he needed to know how to save a dying person. Only then would he understand how to take someone's life. The father frowned and clenched his jaw angrily. The veins on his face were visible, showing his tension. Everyone in the room grew serious. They lowered their heads, and no one spoke. Only this guy could talk to his father like that. Even Ki Tae-young felt awkward. It seemed like everyone else tried only to grovel before the head of the family, but this one acted completely differently. His mother stayed composed too. She was the eldest and the strongest. Suddenly, the father mentioned Bora's friend. The girl flinched. The man asked if Ki Tae-o was acting out like this because of her, the intern, and stubbornly resisting like a mule. He didn't answer. He just picked up a glass and took a sip. The man asked if the eldest son really thought he would let him date her and work there. The man just smiled cheerfully and said it was his, meaning the father's, fault for having kids so close in age, so now there were problems with the heir. It seemed like the man was about to roar like an animal, a wolf, for instance, out of anger. To calm down a bit, he turned to Secretary Anne and asked her to pour him something stronger, since cheap alcohol bored him. She smiled and said she'd take care of it. She did, and the man immediately started drinking it. She watched him and smiled. She blushed and quietly told him not to drink too fast or he might choke. Secretary Anne even touched his shoulder, which caught the attention of the woman sitting at the end of the table, Bora's mother. The other two women ignored it. It seemed the woman was horrified by what she saw and heard. She suddenly addressed Secretary Anne. The woman responded in a sweet voice and was about to turn back to the mother. But the mother lunged like a bird, grabbing her by the hair, calling her a goat, and saying she had no right to touch him. She threw the assistant to the floor and asked how long this goat had been wagging her tail in front of the man. Of course, the woman protested, but her reaction only grew sharper, as if the secretary was taking her for a fool. She turned to everyone at the table and asked if they'd all seen that. The father just exhaled heavily, even though he was the first to have brought the family to such chaos, so he had no right to complain. Bora could only lower her head in shame. Of course, it was a shame that her own mother caused a scandal in front of everyone. It seemed like the woman had lost her mind. She turned red from yelling at the secretary. Meanwhile, Kanja, along with Do-jun, were already waiting for their friend. They felt lucky to have her as a friend. The main heroine asked the guy if he knew how many hotels Bora's family owned, but Do-jun didn't know. He hadn't even counted. Nearby, they noticed a popular girl. Kanjia said she recognized her. She said she was the thief from that romance movie. Do-jun added that you had to be really beautiful to get cast in a film. Since they were talking about love, the main heroine remembered Do-jun mentioning that he liked someone. She asked who it was. The guy adjusted his glasses and asked if it really mattered right now. The girl said that, actually, she was still curious. While they were standing there, Do-jun noticed another celebrity. Kanjia asked where exactly. Do-jun described him as tall, well-built, a handsome man. He said they both definitely knew him. As it turned out, he distracted the girl because that man was Ki Tae-o. Do-jun asked who could have been with him since there seemed to be a strange vibe between them. The girl also noticed a doctor there. Standing next to him was an older woman, in whose presence he, by the way, smiled. Now the main heroine was excited. Who was that? Her hands seemed to start trembling, and Dojun asked what had happened. The girl asked if men really couldn't be satisfied with one woman, even if he was impotent. Dojun asked what made her even ask that. The girl said her imagination had run wild, since the doctor's secret couldn't be revealed. Still, it seemed like there was a really special vibe between them. The main heroine didn't really know what to think about it. And Dojun, watching his friend, just let out a heavy sigh. Suddenly, the guy asked his friend if she knew about the Big Five at their hospital. Kangjia asked him to clarify, and Dojun smiled as he was about to explain. But suddenly, Bora appeared and asked what the Big Five even was. As soon as she, Bora, that is, arrived, the guy immediately blushed, a full-on reaction, like he'd just seen a friend show up. The main heroine was happy to see her friend, but the guy quickly said he needed to use the restroom and left. Kangjia pointed out Ki Tae-o and the girl she thought was with him, asking Bora if she happened to know her. Seeing the woman, her mother, the girl got annoyed. The meeting was over, yet she was still here, talking with her brother. And why? Unexpectedly for the main heroine, the woman approached and asked if she was the same Kangjia who was Bora's friend. Bora jumped in and introduced the woman herself, saying this was her mother. The woman said she was pleased to meet her. The main heroine was thrilled. First, to finally meet her best friend's mom, and second, it potentially ruled out the idea that she could be anything for Ki Tae-o. Kangjia stepped closer and commented that the woman looked so young you could easily think she and Dr. Tae-o were dating. She just laughed and said the girl was flattering her. Bora, on the other hand, wasn't impressed with what she saw. She commented that the scene wasn't the most pleasant. Her brother heard her. Then he looked back at Kangjia. Today she looked unusual, very elegant, and expensive. The man decided to take matters into his own hands and explain everything to everyone. He told Bora this and stepped forward. He approached the main heroine, placed a hand on her shoulder, and addressed the aunt, the mother of Bora. Then, somehow suddenly, for reasons unclear, he announced that Kangjia was not only Bora's friend, but his girlfriend. The main heroine felt like she was floating. She knew she was just pretending to be his girlfriend, but it felt real. Bora's mother was surprised that the man's words were true. Really? Ki Tae-o was dating the intern? She looked at the young man with slightly surprised eyes, because he seemed different around this girl. Not like the Ki Tae-o she knew. Even if it was just a rumor, it still seemed like there was something special in his gaze. And a smile played at his lips. The first thing the woman thought was that if they stayed together at the hospital, her Bora could easily take over Ki Tae-o, and the business would be in her hands. So it would benefit her if the rumor were true. To flatter him, the woman personally expressed surprise at such a coincidence. Kangjia was Bora's good friend and also in a relationship with the family's eldest son. She called them a perfect couple, as if fate had brought them together. Only Bora seemed to notice that her mother was faking it. After all, she was her daughter and could read when her mother had sly plans on her face. The woman even quietly told the main heroine that she encouraged their marriage and would support it. After that, Ki Tae-o turned to Bora's mother and suggested they go get a drink together. The main heroine didn't understand anything, but there was no reason to worry that he would fall for her. Later, they left. The girl wanted to rush after them, forgetting about her friends. Ki Tae-o was just that good-looking. Luckily, Bora put a hand on her shoulder and gently brought her back down, reminding her that she had plans with her friends. By the way, they were celebrating that the applications of these two young interns had been accepted. Kanjia, when they clinked glasses, got distracted and asked if these glasses were even meant for toasting. Her friend just laughed. Bora exhaled heavily and said maybe it would have been better if she stayed abroad, also wearing the doctor's coat. Dojin said, on the contrary, it was better she was here so they had access to the hotel, for which he got a playful smack on the head from his friend. The guy explained it was just a joke, and Bora smiled, saying she actually liked learning hospitality. Maybe that's why she went to her father. When the girl said she needed to take her studies more seriously, her friend looked at her differently. More seriously. He suddenly started saying something about the doctor's coat. Then he blushed like a tomato and added that he was willing to lend Bora his coat, well, if ever needed. The main heroine was sitting across from them, so she noticed the change first. She asked Dojun if he had eaten something weird because he was acting super strange. Meanwhile, Bora smiled at him and thanked him for caring about her feelings. A little later, the food arrived. Bora was used to this, but her friends were completely thrilled. Dojun, ignoring every etiquette rule while chewing, said that being friends with the heir of a company was really cool. Kanjia scolded him for acting like a pig. Bora distracted her. She called her over, but in a serious way. Her friend said the girl shouldn't take it so seriously, though she didn't specify what she meant, so Gia asked her to clarify. Then Bora explained that the girl shouldn't make it seem too obvious that she was really Bora's brother's girlfriend. The main heroine didn't understand what her friend meant, but Bora explained that even her mother believed it. She said now she would try to get rid of her brother, and for that, she might try to set them up, and even marry them off, for example. They both imagined the wedding in their own way. Kangjia thought of it like a dream. She was, of course, surprised that such a sweet woman could actually plan everything like that. Bora wanted to explain what would actually happen if her friend suddenly became part of the family. But the friend thought she would be happy. That's what could happen. Bora exhaled heavily. Yeah, she was used to this. But Gia had no idea how dangerous it could really be. While they were having dinner, another guest suddenly appeared near their table. Remember the sunshine, and a little ray comes along. That's exactly why Ki Tae-o came to them, to congratulate Kangjia on her application being accepted. And, believe it or not, with a smile, an honest one. He told the girl she looked really beautiful today. Kangjia even covered her mouth with her hand and blushed. This was literally her dream. Gosh, she hadn't expected it at all. Bora, it seemed, even let her drink spill a bit. The shock on her face was impossible to miss. And that's saying something for Dojun. When Ki Tae-o was with Bora's mom, the woman asked if things with Gia were really serious or just a way to annoy her father. Of course, he said it was serious. Well, he couldn't expose their fake relationship. The woman, by the way, smiled contentedly. She was pleased with how things were unfolding. Suddenly, she got up from the table and asked the man if he was okay with everything. He didn't quite get what she meant. She explained that people fall for sweet girls like her easily. So if the man didn't show she belonged to him, someone else could take her. That probably explains his sudden decision to go see his, well, their arranged fake girlfriend. Ki Tae-o turned to his friends and said he was going to take Kangjia with him. But Bora wasn't having it. She poked her brother with a finger and told him that was pretty rude. The girl explained that they were celebrating the accepted applications of Dojun and Kangjia. So why did he think he could just take her like that? Dojun didn't say a word. He was scared of Ki Tae-o and didn't dare speak to him roughly, so it was better to stay out of it. Even Bora's words didn't satisfy him. He wanted everything to go his way. Bora noticed that her brother was seriously mad. But she couldn't give in and give up her friend. Surprisingly, he gave in quickly. He said, "Fine, let it be." He didn't just leave. He explained that he'd wait for the girl. After all, they'd eventually leave this place. The main heroine blushed. She hadn't expected that. He was even going to wait for her. Bora saw that her friend was sitting there, totally enchanted. She was mad that Gio was so head over heels for him, and also mad at the way he was acting. Bora decided it was easier to just let her go. Otherwise, she'd whine. Dojun agreed, letting it slide. And so, they headed to the hotel room together. On the way, the girl thought about how she had just met his aunt recently, and now they were already alone together. Right now, Kan Jia felt like she was really his girlfriend. He opened the door for her and let her in first. It's hard to even describe how she felt. Madly in love. She immediately thought that they had skipped several steps in their relationship. For the record, she didn't even know what lingerie she had on today. What if something happened? Before the man even spoke to her, she had already imagined all sorts of inappropriate things. Watching her, he decided he needed to ask what she was thinking about. The girl said it was fine. He leaned closer, placing his hands on her shoulders. And in her mind, the conversation continued, him asking why she was blushing if she wasn't thinking anything. Of course, in reality, nothing like that was happening. He was just helping with her jacket. She cursed her imagination. Why couldn't she just not think anything? While he hung up her jacket, the main heroine called out to him. Kanjia wanted to make sure she looked at least decent, so she asked where she could find the restroom. The man, wasn't exactly ordinary either. He asked if she was planning on taking a shower. Normal people wouldn't say that, knowing the reaction could be intense. And it was. Fortunately, he still pointed her to the restroom, and the girl ran off. He waited for her. Then, suddenly, he heard a scream from the bathroom. Just in case, he asked if everything was okay. The girl said yes, nervously looking at her reflection. It turned out she didn't like how she looked. She felt embarrassed showing herself like that in front of the man she was in love with. With that face, she thought, it'd be easy to put him off. While she was gone, the order arrived, and Ki Tae-o poured wine for both of them. After tasting it, the girl said it was really good, even licking her lips. Etiquette wasn't better than Dojun's. Ki Tae-o said he liked the wine too. They had similar tastes. After drinking, he guessed she might be hungry since he had taken her from dinner, so he suggested a snack. While with him, the girl remembered she had a question about the Big Five everyone in the hospital was talking about. The man even asked her to clarify. The main heroine explained that it was constantly talked about in the hospital, and apparently, Ki Tae-o was part of it. Chewing her food, she said it was intriguing. She was really curious about it. Suddenly, the man crossed his arms over his chest and with a satisfied smile said that the Big Five were the men running the most business in the hospital. When the girl didn't get what he meant, the man just pointed down with his finger. She imagined Ki Tae-o pointing too, but, without that extra shirt. Definitely suggestive. The main heroine blushed and lowered her head. She was probably imagining some weird stuff out of surprise. He noticed, so he suddenly leaned closer, took her chin, and asked if she was okay, since she seemed to be blushing. By the way, that's exactly how it felt to her. So she just sat there, staring blankly at the doctor. He asked if everything was all right or if she was just lost in thought. Kanja just asked him to repeat what he said. The man reminded her he'd mentioned the Big Five. Only then did she remember, oh, right, he's impotent. For a moment, Ki Tae-o paused, thinking about her words. Then he smiled and said it was hard to believe she actually bought it. The doctor thought she'd already guessed. The girl even stopped chewing. And the doctor suddenly thought he wanted to spend more time with her, having tea or wine, maybe watching movies sometimes, just having dinner at restaurants. Weird little wish, really. That night, nothing happened between them besides conversation. The next day, the doctor had to fly to Baltimore for some important surgery. She wasn't exactly upset, just hoping for at least a kiss or something. The next day, surprisingly, there was work waiting. She was listening to one of the patients, a talented girl. Well, the patient turned out to be Ki Tae-o, who said something was bothering him, not where she was listening. He said that, since he was a doctor too, he'd just show her what and where was troubling him. He lowered the instrument further than needed, making the girl scream. So, flirting, huh? Well, or unfortunately for her, it was only a dream. No Ki Tae-o nearby. He had flown off, and she, it turns out, had fallen asleep. Waking from the dream, the girl was upset it had only been a dream. It had perfectly demonstrated her fantasies, maybe a bit too perfectly. What if she'd said something stupid while asleep? Then the main heroine lay back on the table, missing the doctor. And just at the worst moment, Dojun came in, calling her a puppy. What an idiot, she thought. But she didn't say anything, except that she was missing the doctor like crazy. She felt like she was melting into that table. Dojun said she looked like she hadn't seen him for years, and she continued pining, remembering their kisses. She even thought she should have been a bit bolder, since that time he had taken all the initiative. Kanjia drifted again into her naughty fantasies, imagining what would have happened if she had taken the lead. Screaming, she hit the table with her fists. How can someone keep thinking about this all the time? It's enough to drive you insane. And there's internet in America, so why hasn't he even written? Maybe she misunderstood. Or maybe it had all just been a dream. Since Dojun hadn't heard anything normal from her, he slipped out of the office, telling everyone else not to go in or bother her. When the girl was on the verge of hysterics, she heard a message come through on her phone. It turned out the doctor had texted her. So he really hadn't forgotten about her. And she doubted him. He sent a photo, then added that he'd sent it by accident so she could delete it. Gia went pale. She was about to argue again when he wrote that he had another photo for her too. Then he sent his own photo. In it, he was smiling, so incredibly handsome, as always. Kangjia decided that if she got his photo, she had to send him one too. A little photo session began. In one of the shots, she barely looked like herself. Quite the beauty. She took a whole bunch of photos, probably more than she ever had in her life at once. While the man was flipping through some documents, he heard a notification on his phone. He was a little surprised when he saw the message. He put the documents aside and smiled. She had sent him a cute photo, and they even asked each other how they were doing. After that conversation, he went to take a shower, and when the doorbell rang, he saw Bora standing there. She was probably drunk, all flushed and serious. She said they needed to have a serious talk. Without much enthusiasm, the man invited her in. When they both sat at the table, he asked her why she'd come and what had happened. Gathering her courage, Bora spoke seriously to Ki Tae-o. She asked if her brother was playing around with his friend, Kanjia, because if he was, he needed to stop. The thing was, Gia was a good girl. He had noticed that anyway. So he asked what Bora was getting at. She gathered her courage again and slammed the table. Pointing at him, she blurted out that Gia didn't deserve that kind of treatment. Bora didn't know why her friend had fallen for him, but that was the reality. She also explained that her brother was very important to the girl, so any games would hurt her, so they should stop immediately. When Bora fell silent, he asked if her tirade was over. It seemed Ki Tae-o got angry. He said he knew her well enough, and wasn't stupid enough to miss it, that she was just pretending to be drunk. The girl didn't expect this, that he would actually see it. She thought that if she acted drunk, he wouldn't get angry and would just listen. But since she'd started, she decided to keep going. Bora said he needed to listen, that Gia came from a normal family. She wasn't like them. In reality, all this was just memories. Bora had visited him before. He recalled those words, and now he was talking with Gia. Maybe his sister was right. He really did feel the difference between his family and Gia's. His family, especially his mom, could have caused trouble. Smiling at Kanjia's photo, the man said he missed her terribly and wished he could see her. At work, the main heroine was in an amazing mood. She kept repeating that today was the day it would finally happen. But Dojun didn't share her excitement. She even asked why he looked so glum, like he wasn't happy about anything. He said he didn't know himself, but he just wasn't in the mood. Still, he tried to at least act a little cheerful. He asked the main heroine if she was ready for dinner together. She responded eagerly, "Yes, of course I'm ready," especially since the doctor was returning to Korea today. But then she suddenly hesitated. She had completely forgotten that she already had plans for today. So now they were sitting together with Dojun at a table full of food. There was also a blonde guy with them, chatting with the man next to him. This the main heroine couldn't help but notice melted that something was still off with her friend. Kanjia has been in love with Ki Tae-o for so long. And now that they're finally together, everything feels so sweet. Of course, he didn't mean that literally. But also
Kanjia
a little
took it
scary.
literally
And suggested
because
doing
deep down,
an ECG.
she still feels like they come
man
from
in
two
glasses
completely
joined them.
different worlds.
He had just come in from outside
honestly,
and was annoyed
I
at the
can't
rain
blame
in
her.
winter. He
When
glanced
someone
at his
that
colleague
perfect
chooses
and looked
you.
a little surprised.
It almost feels
Surprised
too good
because
to be real.
they hadn't even fully gathered
But
yet.
Ki Tae-o's
and the head
actions
of
in
the
this
department
chapter
was already drinking.
The way he reassures
He turned to his
her,
friend
holds
and
her
said that
hand,
Tae-o was
tells her
quite
to
the
trust
sly
only
one.
him, and he was glad these kids came to their department.
That was so
Every
romantic.
department wanted them. I was literally
Of course,
smiling
this
the
couple
whole
just
time.
overheard and didn't really
And that
pay
dinner
attention.
date? The feeding each
Dojun
other
felt
scene?
unwell.
And the girl
Adorable.
was worried about him. At the same time,
But if they'd heard
you can
it,
already feel
they'd have
that
been
something is
pleasantly
coming.
surprised.
His family,
The blonde,
the arranged
mouthful,
date, pointed
the
at
pressure
himself
from their different
and
social
asked if
worlds.
anyone wanted him too.
It feels like a storm
but no one
slowly
really knew
building
for sure.
in the background.
Somewhat mysteriously,
And I'm honestly a little
the man in
nervous
glasses
about what's
looked
going
at
to happen
all
next.
the interns. The
Will
blonde just kept
Kanjia be
eating
able
and drinking
to stay
water.
confident in their
Not
relationship?
suitable.
Will
Dojun and the
Ki Tae-o
department
really
head probably
stand up
didn't
against
make the
his
cut
family
either.
for her?
The man decided that,
I seriously
in the
can't
end,
wait to see where
only
this story
he and
goes,
Kanjia were
because the
left.
chemistry between these
He turned
two
to the
is
intern
just too good.
and asked if she could handle a drink.
Thank you so much
because
for
if she
watching this
could,
video.
They could each
Don't
have
forget to
another
subscribe
glass.
and leave a like if you
The main
enjoyed the
heroine
recap.
smiled and thanked him.
I'm sending all
and
of
at that
you
very
a big
moment,
hug. And I'll
Dojun
see you in the
started
next
getting up
video.
and said he had to make a call. Once the guy left, the girl concluded that something had definitely happened to him. She even remembered when he'd mentioned the girl he liked. Maybe it was her causing his problems? Very likely. She figured she had to at least try to find out. Meanwhile, the man in glasses poured himself a drink too, saying he was glad they came to their department. Drinking was more fun that way. The main heroine suddenly froze, thinking for a moment. She realized her friend had gone somewhere, the blonde was just drinking water and eating, and the department head couldn't even talk anymore. So it was just her left, right? If she drank now, she'd have to crawl home, which was a terrible idea. So she jumped up and said she needed to use the bathroom. By the way, the blonde probably wasn't feeling great either and needed the bathroom. Once everyone disappeared, the department head put a hand on his friend's shoulder and said he needed to try, since he was already giving it his all. Leaving the room, the girl checked her phone. She was nervous. Where could this upset fool have gone? She was about to take the elevator downstairs to look when suddenly the guy burst in. The girl reminded him that he was supposedly heading to the bathroom. The blonde put a hand on his stomach and explained that it was occupied. He was holding it in as best he could, but his stomach was stronger, and the intern was basically launching a gas attack. The main heroine looked at him like she wanted to strangle him. Who does stuff like that? But he didn't care how she looked at him. His stomach hurt too much, and he needed the toilet. The blonde ran to the bathroom, and the girl called after him. Idiot. Honestly, like a kid. And really, why would anyone eat something that smelled like a nuclear reactor? It was hard to imagine how unlucky she could be. The elevator doors opened right in front of Ki Tae-o. He immediately smiled. Unexpected meeting, but a pleasant one. The girl asked if he had just come from the airport. He said, almost, he had stopped by home to drop off his things. At first, he didn't notice the smell, but eventually he did. He wanted to ask if she was already heading home, but he hesitated. At first, the girl didn't get why he... Only later did she realize he'd noticed that terrible smell. But the culprit wasn't there. It was just Kanjia. So what did he think? When they got out of the elevator, she called to him. With tears in her eyes, it seemed, she said it wasn't her. The man, of course, said it was okay. She felt those notes of distrust, so she swore up and down that it wasn't her. Of course, he tried to calm her, saying he understood, but he probably didn't really believe her. She kept explaining that things had just turned out badly, but it wasn't her. The man called her by name to get her to calm down and pay attention to him. Taking her hands in his, he asked if she had missed him. The words got stuck in her throat, but from the doctor's eyes, she knew he already knew the answer. She wanted to say it herself, but suddenly, 2 male voices came from behind, saying someone probably had a little accident in the elevator. As soon as they noticed Ki Tae-o, they jumped up and politely greeted him. He, by the way, wasn't happy they interrupted, so he asked sharply why they were there so late. He said they probably decided to stay around somewhere. The guys immediately tried to explain, but the girl got it right away. He said it for her sake. The problem was, he probably didn't believe her. Sitting at the table, the man in glasses said this wasn't any kind of team dinner. When someone came in, he asked grumpily why they'd been gone so long and why they arrived so late. Turns out, it wasn't interns. It was Ki Tae-o. The man in glasses immediately got up and bowed to the doctor, greeting him. Ki Tae-o sat next to the department head, saying he was already pretty drunk, but not too drunk to ask if America had impressed his colleague. The man said it wasn't bad, but he preferred their hospital and Korea more. The department head blushed red hearing that. It sounded incredibly sweet. When the interns returned, he told them to take a page from Dr. Ki Tae-o's book. The department head looked at the guy next to Jia and asked him, calling him Hee-chan, when he'd managed to switch seats. The guy said he'd actually just arrived. The department head didn't understand who had been sitting there all this time. Only after a few seconds did he realize he'd been drinking with Cha Bong-pal the whole time. The main heroine thought now it was starting to feel like team building. By the way, the blonde who had let her down finally came back. He looked pleased, like everything was fine now. He didn't even notice that Dr. Ki Tae-o had joined them. The guy greeted him in surprise and shared that he heard his plane was just today. Ki Tae-o explained he'd managed to come after the flight. Kangjia seemed to flare up with anger when she saw him. That was how shamefully he had let her down. The department head pointed to the blonde, saying everyone should learn from him. He was a very polite guy. The main heroine didn't listen. She tried whispering the whole truth to the man about the elevator. Of course he noticed and tried to figure out what she was saying. Even though she pointed at the blonde, nothing was clear. He thought she sounded like she wanted something, so he listened more carefully. He guessed she wanted grilled meat, so he said he'd place the order. He ordered a whole bunch of meat for everyone, not sure exactly which one she wanted. Eventually, Dojin returned. He sat next to his friend and apologized for being so long, saying he could cover the drinks as compensation. As soon as he sat, he downed a full glass of alcohol. The girl was really worried about him now. He said that while riding the elevator, he'd noticed a terrible smell and wondered who didn't make it to the bathroom. As soon as he said that, Ki Tae-o started acting strangely. He really thought it had happened to the girl. So he took the glass and poured alcohol in it, saying, "My tongue has no bones." When it was time to leave, Everyone was super drunk, and they cheered when Ki Tae-o said they were finally heading home. Ki Tae-o still had to get the department head home. The man was in terrible shape, leaning on him with closed eyes. Cha Bong-pal said his colleague had already given it his all, yet it wasn't enough. Ki Tae-o was amazed that the guy could sing reasonably well in that state. His words were actually understandable. Cha Bong-pal offered to take the man home himself, since Ki Tae-o was probably tired from the long flight. The interns bowed again to the seniors, thanking them for the delicious dinner. Ki Tae-o sent her off with just a look. He was so vigilant that later the main heroine touched her face, thinking there was something on it. She was left alone when everyone went their separate ways, staring at Dr. Ki Tae-o. It was sad that she didn't get to say that she'd really missed him. The chance was lost. He'd already gone home, and she had to leave. She remembered how he had held her hands and asked if she'd missed him, and she at least now admitted, "Yes, I did." But someone heard her. Someone asked if she really missed him as much as she said. It was Ki Tae-o. She hadn't even noticed when he'd managed to get here. He just handed her a drink. The main heroine thanked him and took the drink. She didn't really understand why he went all the way out here for her. She was thrilled at the thought that maybe he just really wanted to see her. She didn't even notice a motorcycle behind them. She only saw it when it got dangerously close and someone called her name. Luckily, Ki Tae-o grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the way. Thanks to him, she didn't get hit. But she didn't think about that. She just said, "Yes, I really missed you." He pressed her hand to his chest, captivated by her confession. The girl got flustered and blushed. She'd said it without thinking. How embarrassing. And why is her heart pounding so hard? She'd always liked the doctor, always acted confident, and now she's blushing like a schoolgirl, afraid to even speak. Suddenly, he spoke to her again. He softly said her name, even sang it a little. Then, with a playful smile, he asked her to date him, not as a cover, but for real. From now on, he wanted them to be together forever, like a real couple. In the elevator to her apartment, she was already in his arms, crying tears of happiness, insisting to her new boyfriend that she wasn't really crying. He said it was okay and that he'd missed her a lot while he was abroad. That probably made him want to start dating her even more. She blushed again, but this time she lifted her eyes to meet his. The elevator arrived, and they were still hugging. Ki Tae-o said it might be good to go, but she didn't want to let go. He promised he wasn't going anywhere, since he also had to get out. For some reason, she took it as if she was being too clingy, pushed away a little, and thanked him for walking her. He asked her to finally let him out of the elevator, but she insisted that it was time for him to go home. She pressed the button to go to the first floor anyway, ignoring that he needed to get off. Once it got quiet, she let out a deep sigh. What a night! She decided it didn't matter whether anyone heard or not. She jumped for joy and screamed. She was so happy. She lay flat on the floor, saying she really did it, that she made it, and now she was dating the man of her dreams. She now called him her Ki Tae-o, her one and only, irreplaceable doctor. Now he belonged only to her. She didn't even notice when he returned and stood over her. He probably heard everything. But why did he come back? He said she really was drunk. So he decided to leave her there and, can you believe it, went into one of the apartments himself. Kang Jia stared in shock at what she'd just seen. Could it be that he actually lives here? So they're neighbors. The girl blushed red as a tomato again. Still, she got up from the floor, changed clothes, tidied up, went to bed, and in the morning burst into Ki-bora's room shouting. She covered herself with a pillow, saying she'd been drinking all night and that her friend was waking her up so early. Jia shook her for a few more seconds, then stopped abruptly. Only then did the main heroine notice that Bora wasn't in the best shape. Her eyes were puffy. Gia was surprised that her friend had been drinking and asked if she was alone. Bora just told her to leave her alone. Kanjia insisted that the traitor get up and explain if Dr. Tae-o really was their neighbor. Bora explained that she didn't want to bother her about it. And besides, her life would have been miserable if she had told her. Gia whispered, asking if her friend really planned to keep sleeping. She answered firmly, yes. Kangjia asked in a sad voice if her friend really wasn't curious how she and the doctor started dating. And then Bora suddenly opened her eyes wide. What is Gia saying? Kanjia boasted that they were now dating, and just as importantly, it meant she and her friend were now relatives. Bora jumped up and started asking questions. The sly friend said that to find out more, she had to come to the kitchen. She got what she wanted. The girl poured water for them, and Bora grumbled that it had actually happened. Bora said that if they were dating, Gia had to try hard, since these were his first relationships. The main heroine was surprised. He's such a handsome guy. Bora asked rhetorically if anyone would want a guy who only thinks about cleanliness and fusses over details. Gia thought that was exactly what she needed. She also remembered their kiss. So that means she became the one he kissed first? The girl said that since Bora was his sister, she could help with their relationship. She just let out a heavy sigh, complaining about how fate loves to mock unfortunate people sometimes. At least, it seemed like her friend felt inspired. She figured that those who are meant to be together by fate probably just have to be together. That's just how it is. The girl remembered someone had called her yesterday. It was Dojin. That was when he had stepped away from the table to make a call. At first, he said her name, and, after a long pause, confessed his love. Right then, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. They were both surprised, since they weren't expecting anyone. Bora went to check who it was. She was shocked to see Dojun and Ki Tae-o standing there, together. Something was off with Dojun's face. His cheekbones were so noticeable, and the bruises under his eyes could be seen from a mile away. It wasn't hard to guess where he'd been last night. They both said they'd bought some food. Dojun offered it to Bora, while Ki Tae-o seemed to be more focused on Gia. As for Bora, she was just in shock at what she was seeing right in front of her. So, about how they ended up here at the same time. Dojun wanted to apologize for calling while drunk. He realized he'd let his emotions get the best of him and was about to knock when someone called out to him. It was Dr. Ki Tae-o. He asked seriously what the guy was doing here. Dojun started improvising on the spot. He said his friend Kanjia was really drunk yesterday, so he bought her some soup. Ki Tae-o started looking menacing. He said that even though he and Gia were close, it wasn't close enough for Dojun to show up at her place in the morning. The guy tried to justify himself, saying they were just best friends, but Tae-o cut him off, saying they're dating now. Dojun fell silent, processing what he just heard. Then Dr. Ki Tae-o repeated that he and Kanjia were now a real, not fake, couple. Dojun was in shock. His friend had wanted this for so long, and now he hears it like this. Ki Tae-o added angrily that if his girlfriend ever wanted soup after a hangover, he could bring it himself. The guy, scared, said he'd misunderstood. That's how they ended up in Kanjia and Bora's apartment. They decided Tae-o brought soup for his sister and Dojun for his best friend. While the girls weren't around, Tae-o asked Dojun how long they'd been dating. Dojun replied that they weren't dating at all. Ki Tae-o reminded him that he, as a man, should pull himself together and confess his feelings to Bora. By the way, it was just now that she came out to them, saying they'd messed things up. The girl said she'd reveal an important female secret. Bora said no girl likes it when a guy shows up at her place in the morning. She explained that girls just wake up at that time, sleepy, groggy. And these guys show up looking all neat and put together. Ki Tae-o reminded them that he actually came in sportswear, not all neat and dressed up. Kang Ja, sitting across from him, whispered that everything was fine. To calm his sister, the brother said he'd remember that. Ki Tae-o said he came so early because he and Kang Ja were now dating. But his sister replied that she already knew. The main heroine said it was really sweet that the doctor came all the way here for her. But the only thing she didn't get was why Do-jun had dragged his ass here with soup. He suddenly blushed, saying they drank a lot yesterday, and he didn't want to eat the soup alone, so he came. By the way, Bora blushed too. Only Kanjia sat there, completely confused. Since when did her friend get so sentimental? Ki Tae-o supported Do-jun. After all, he's a man. He should make the first move and tell the truth. Suddenly, the guy slammed his hand on the table. No, he shouted that he was sorry for hurting Bora, that he shouldn't have called drunk, but his feelings were real. Now he directly confessed to Bora that he was crazy in love with her. Ki Tae-o and Kanjia felt awkward, so they decided they could finish breakfast at his place. When the two were alone, they still felt awkward. He knew he had to start the conversation, so he tilted his head, about to say something, but the girl suddenly stopped him. She said no words were needed, and gently took his hand. She blushed too, covering her face with her hand, and whispered that she wished they could just stay like that. By the way, the two of them also sat down at the table. The girl thanked them for the food, saying she really appreciated it. When they finished eating, Ki Tae-o said she could relax. As for Do-jun, she knew he had problems with his girlfriend, but didn't think Bora was the issue. She asked how the doctor felt about Do-jun's antics. He replied that the guy held his ground. She wondered what they'd been up to. Ki Tae-o guessed they were probably busy with the same things as they were. He said they were probably thinking about what neighbors do when they're alone. Kanjia imagined them alone, like kissing or smiling at each other. She almost spat out her coffee when she thought about it. Then she muttered that they were probably having coffee too. Ki Tae-o just smiled at that. Suddenly, he moved closer, sat behind her, and hugged her tight, inhaling the scent of her hair. He said it was nice. She hadn't washed her hair yet, so she didn't think so, wanted to tell him not to touch it, but could only nod in agreement. The man guessed he probably smelled like sweat, just coming from training. He suggested she sit there a bit while he quickly took a shower. You can't go around stinking like that after all. So she was left alone, with her thoughts, by herself. She was still red from him hugging her out of nowhere. God, they were actually dating. Now she couldn't get the thought out of her head about him taking a shower. Those fantasies again. Meanwhile, while her brother was in the shower, Bora came over. She came for Kanjia and said Do-jun had already left so she could head back. But she didn't catch her in her brother's apartment. The girl didn't bother. It was her brother's apartment, so she just walked further in, looking for her friend. She found her in a weird position on the couch, even asking if she was okay. Bora asked if the main heroine wanted to stay a bit longer, but she said no, she was heading home. So when Ki Tae-o came out of the shower, unfortunately, he didn't see the girl he was hoping to see right then. When she got to work, the girl ran around the hospital like a lunatic, scaring everyone around. She didn't stop running, so she was probably looking for someone. She'd already checked everywhere she could. Clearly, she was looking for her friend to either question him or give him hell. He tried to hide unnoticed. He thought maybe no one would notice him until the end of the day. Didn't want to explain anything. But luck wasn't on his side, because the main heroine actually found Do-jun and wasn't likely to let him go. She trapped him in a cage. Well, the cage was herself, actually, demanding to know why he was hiding so desperately. Of course, Do-jun denied everything, saying he wasn't hiding, but that made her even angrier. She demanded he explain what happened this morning. Her dear friend hadn't done it kindly, damn it. They went home. Gia expected to find out everything right then. She directly asked if Dojun and Bora were dating now. But within seconds, it was like her friend had disappeared. She ran away so fast. So now the girl forbade Dojun from moving until he told her everything from start to finish. Kang Jia guessed that they, Dojun and Bora, had planned it. So she ran and he hid. Now she was ready for answers. Dojun didn't dare say a word. He trembled like a rabbit, not knowing what to do, because if he didn't tell, he wouldn't get out alive. But fate decided Dojun needed saving, so someone burst into the room. A blonde guy came in, all red-faced, saying, "They shouldn't be doing this here. This isn't normal, it's an office." Both of them got angry and shouted that he misunderstood, talking nonsense. Dojun even showed the middle finger. Long story short, she didn't find out anything. Why wouldn't these two so-called friends explain anything? But she wasn't alone for long, since her beloved Ki Tae-o came to her. The girl was happy to see him too. The man seemed to be hiding something behind his back. He said it was hard to find her today. The main heroine said it was Dojun's fault, since he was hiding and she was looking. But that wasn't so important. She asked if the doctor had been looking for her, and he smiled and said yes. Kang Jia didn't understand why he'd been looking. She immediately thought the worst, like he'd changed his mind about dating her. She imagined him dramatically saying he'd thought it over and realized they weren't right for each other, so they couldn't be together. She didn't even believe it herself. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice her beloved calling her. It turned out there was already a small gift box in her hands. The girl was surprised and asked what it was. He said he had prepared a little gift for her. She thought she might be dreaming. Could this just be another wonderful dream? But when the doctor took her face in his hands, smiled warmly, and said it wasn't a dream at all. It was all true, and she could open the package. She opened it, and there was a pretty necklace. He explained that he bought it in Baltimore. It reminded him of her, so he bought it. The man said he genuinely hoped she would like it when he bought it. Her jaw literally dropped. The girl, you could tell from her face, really liked the necklace. She stared at it with admiration. He offered to help her put it on, but she sharply turned away, took the necklace, and said she would treasure it. She blushed completely, saying she wanted to save the necklace for a special occasion. He didn't argue. It was clear she valued the necklace a lot. No problem if she didn't want to wear it right now. Ki Tae-o said it was time for him to go now. He'd only come for that reason. The main heroine shouted for him to wait. The man immediately stopped and looked at her surprised. She walked up to her boyfriend and gently fixed his uniform. While doing it, she practically melted, blushing so hard. Then, summoning all her courage, she pulled him toward her. Standing on her tiptoes, she kissed him on the cheek. She thanked him lovingly for the wonderful gift. A little later, after that meeting with his girlfriend, he joined his colleagues who were on a break having coffee. He said it was totally true, that Kang Jia had been cutting his hair herself for a really long time. The guys decided she must be skilled enough if she could cut hair. They guessed maybe her parents owned a hair salon. And it was true. Bongpal said he now understood why she went into surgery. She had very skilled hands. Dojun added that her parents were real masters too. One of the guys said he might ask her to cut his hair too, since barbershops are so expensive these days. Since Ki Tae-o was there too, he crumpled his coffee cup angrily and asked what they were planning to ask Kang Jia. The guys didn't understand what had gotten into him, why he suddenly got so mad. But Ki Tae-o insisted they answer who wanted what from Kang Jia. The guy said he'd forgotten out of fear what they were even talking about. It wasn't about Kang Jia anymore. He and Cha Bong-pal decided it was better to leave. After all, they had surgery soon. Now only Ki Tae-o and Dojun remained. The doctor called out to Dojun sharply. He said he wanted to have a serious talk with him. Dojun thought it was the end for him. He probably blurted something out and made Ki Tae-o angry. It turned out Ki Tae-o called him to say that Dojun shouldn't get his hair cut by Kanjia anymore. The doctor said it'd be better for him to go to her parents' salon so he could support her family financially. Dojun said he understood and would do it. The doctor crossed his arms and asked if Dojun had thought he'd be asking about Bora. He got totally scared because actually he had been thinking about it. She was his sister, after all. The man said he didn't interfere in other people's business because he didn't like it, and he didn't like others interfering in his. He wished Dojun luck. Leaving the office, Dojun said he'd consider it Ki Tae-o's blessing. The doctor didn't say anything else. He just waved his hand, telling him to go already. Now the doctor leaned on his chair. He had things to think about, because there were still questions he wanted answered after today. Besides deciding to get a haircut, he decided he needed to finally find out who the father of his girlfriend really was. While the main heroine worked, a few of her colleagues were talking. One guessed it must be like honey around here because Ki Tae-o kept showing up. They'd all noticed. The girl smiled quietly. If only they knew she was the little pot of honey the bee Ki Tae-o kept buzzing to. One guy asked Kanjia if she was really that good at hairstyling. She was surprised. How did he even know? Then the second reminded him it was supposed to be a secret. But the black-haired guy said it couldn't be a secret if everyone knew. One of the guys asked if she could cut his hair someday too, since she gave Dojun such great haircuts. Kanjia thought it was obvious. He was still her childhood friend. She told him, someday, definitely. When the guys said they had an agreement, Ki Tae-o walked in with the question, what agreement? The guy remembered he had bad memories with this doctor. Trauma, so to speak, from last time. It seemed like this man stepped out of a horror movie. Who knew what he could do? Ki Tae-o told Cho In-chol he'd just set up the phone call terribly. And now what's he doing here? Slacking off. He said he'd go fix it right away. The other friend was already sprawled on the floor. And because he was sprawled, Pak Hee-chan that is, he reminded them he filled out patient charts badly, so maybe he wanted to stay overnight and watch. The guy jumped up and said he'd check everything, just not overnight. At that moment, the two of them flew out of the office. Ki Tae-o had wanted that. Until the one who asked to get his hair cut left, Ki Tae-o put a hand on his shoulder and said it wouldn't be good if he asked anything from Jia. The man promised he'd cut the family ropes himself. He said the moment would definitely come when he'd have the chance. The guy's eyes practically popped out. He thought his authority mattered more than the money he might overpay for a haircut. And so he and Kanjia ended up alone together. She thought about how Ki Tae-o seemed like a good guy. But what a lie! He was terrifying at work. When he addressed her, Jia practically jumped out of her seat. When she approached him, Ki Tae-o suggested they go on an official date this weekend, as a couple. Of course, blushing, she agreed. Mentally, she cheered herself on, telling herself she'd finally waited long enough for this. When he said restaurant, the girl suddenly flinched. Ki Tae-o thought she probably didn't like that he picked that particular restaurant. She said it wasn't what it seemed. It's not just a restaurant. It's a super expensive one where reserving a table is practically impossible. And not just anyone can pay the bill. She'd totally forgotten that in front of her wasn't just Dr. Ki Tae-o, but the heir to a huge company. The man asked if he should pick another place, but she refused, saying it was fine, just that it was very pricey. But the doctor cut her off. There's nothing a lady should worry about. Leaving the office, he smiled at her one last time and said they'd see each other over the weekend. So she was left alone in the office again, watching him go. She suddenly remembered Bora's words when she'd said her friend didn't know what it was like dating Ki Tae because one day she'd have to become part of the family. The girl thought it felt like a dream, a really sweet dream. Except they were living in reality, and the alarm clock was ready to remind her of the harsh truth. When Bora called, the main heroine said she was like a little ray of sunshine. You know, like you remember the sun. That's your little ray. Meanwhile, Bora said they had big problems. Their parents had set up a date for Ki Tae-o. Her friend said it seemed like their mother had really pulled it off this time, arranging a meeting with someone they knew well. Even the families had agreed on everything. The girl was surprised to hear this. He'd just invited her on a date. She asked if Ki Tae-o knew about it himself. Bora said, of course he did. She even knows. Naturally, Kang-jia got upset, realizing she was now in the way, even though Bora had warned her more than once. While Ki Tae-o was seeing a client, the girl messaged him that she'd be spending the weekend with her family, so the reservation had to be canceled. He asked if there were any problems. She didn't even know what to say, since she hated lying. The girl decided to say she promised her brother she'd spend time with him. Technically, it wasn't even a lie. When the girls woke up, Bora was doing a face mask. She scolded her friend for falling in love without expecting it, even though she had warned her. The main heroine asked what she should do now, and Bora, of course, said she needed to put an end to it. It was easier when she loved him from afar. But Kang-jia kept whining. She said he was already dating her, yet still going on this date. She kinda understood he was that type of person. But she didn't like how everything suddenly turned into Kang-jia versus one of the richest families. Can you believe it? And she, the selfish one, thought that after Bora warned her 100 times. Her friend kept going, saying she wasn't on their level. That really pissed off Kang-jia. She suddenly jumped out of bed, showed her fist to her friend, and reminded her that she was also from the Ki family. Jia caught her so off guard that Bora really got scared. Well, what did she say? That Jia wasn't even her match? She even squeezed her a little. Of course, not too hard. At first, her friend had to suffer a little. That's how it would be fair, Jia decided. In short, when the training was over, the main heroine admitted that it was really hard for her. Bora asked if that was why her friend had canceled the date. She agreed at first, but then they both heard a message come through on her phone. It turned out to be Ki Tae-o. He wrote that he moved the date to the evening so she could play with her brother first. Their mom was surprised when she saw her daughter, Kang-jia, at the doorstep. She asked if everything was okay, since she hadn't even said she was coming. The girl said she didn't need to call when she wanted to visit family. Her little brother was super happy to see her, even ran up excitedly. Jia called him her cute little dumpling. When her older brother came out, he said that Jaemin needed to grow a bit, then he'd raise him his way. As soon as he said that, he immediately got a smack on the head from his older sister, who said he should start raising him himself. The older brother said that the man who marries her will definitely have a hard time. And the younger brother objected, saying he'd marry her himself. The older brother decided this moment should be remembered, so he aimed the camera at them. Although he was filming to show his brother in 10 years, just to make him look a little silly. The girl actually played with her brother until she was completely exhausted and lay down on the floor next to him. She thought intern life had made her a bit stronger, but nope, not at all. Her little brother said she shouldn't lie down too long. He was already getting bored. The girl, barely alive, said she'd stay down a bit longer. But when she saw the time, she suddenly jumped up. The date! She shouted that she had a really urgent matter and ran to get ready. The older brother said it seemed like Jaemin had been left alone. He'd have to play by himself now. But that wasn't the case. Mom quickly took his phone, holding it like a yogi holding, well, like he had nothing in his hands. She told Jaemin that if his sister had things to do, he still had a little brother to play with. Mom looked angry. She said the brother should also spend a little time with Jaemin. Meanwhile, Kang-jia was getting ready for her date, telling herself in her head that everything would be fine. She'd been in love for so long. She needed to be more decisive. She dressed beautifully and decided that starting today, she'd give it her all. She quietly slipped out of her room. Only Jaemin noticed, since he was sitting facing her door. She quietly motioned for him to be quiet, not to tell anyone. Her little brother said, "Sis, you look so pretty." And the older one hissed, "The rabbit thief's been caught, and the game's over." But the little one didn't want that. He loudly protested, saying he still wanted to play. Meanwhile, Ki Tae-o was already waiting for his princess. She appeared a little later, calling out to him from behind. The man was a little surprised when he turned and saw Kan-jia. She looked really cute today. Her outfit, light makeup, accessories, all perfectly matched her natural beauty. Even Ki Tae-o admitted she looked incredible. He actually said she was beautiful. The girl was thrilled. Girls love hearing that, as they say. The man asked if she had a good time with her brother, and she said yes. Then he suddenly hugged her tightly and asked if their playtime had been so much fun that they had to postpone the date. She blushed, embarrassed it had come out that way. She said it just got a little chilly, and then Ki Tae-o hugged her not just with his arms, but with his coat too. He said hugging her was nice and asked if they could just stay like that for a moment before heading out. Holding her, he knew she wouldn't have postponed the date for something so small. He thought about Bora and his mother. Probably this family was trying to pull something behind his back. But he wouldn't let anyone or anything get in their way. The main heroine gently pushed back and said he had a pretty scary expression on his face just now. It turned out someone else was watching them. He looked at the couple and thought they were cute, wishing his own daughter would bring home a good guy someday. That someone was actually Kan-jia's father. He loved his daughter deeply and worried she might end up with the wrong guy. Later, they went into the restaurant and were sitting at a table, having dinner. The man suddenly said Kan-jia should speak. But she wasn't really sure what exactly she was supposed to say. He said she should say what she wanted to say. He could see it written all over her face. Kan-jia suddenly wondered if Ki Tae-o even knew when she had first fallen for him. Like, when it all started. She smiled, remembering the day she came to the university with a stroller and little Jaemin. He was only 100 days old then. For some reason, the baby got really happy and started moving around actively. And the stroller wheel got stuck between the tiles. Talk about bad luck. Really bad luck. She didn't even know how to get the stroller out herself. Then suddenly, someone appeared from behind. It was Dr. Ki Tae-o. He rolled up his sleeves and said he could help with the stroller. The man was strong, so he quickly handled the small problem. And the baby loved it. He didn't even look back then, but she bowed and thanked him for helping. She didn't know anything about him at that time, but she suddenly wanted to be closer to Dr. Tae-o. That's when she first fell in love with him. And now she had a little worry. She asked seriously but firmly if he had really agreed to go on a date with another girl. He wasn't even surprised by the question. He said firmly that he hadn't agreed to anything. She, of course, didn't doubt him, but she exhaled in relief, though how could he say it so casually? Suddenly, she thought of something, and sharply, with a surprised look, lifted her head to him. She asked again if he really wouldn't go anywhere, even if the family argued. He smiled and said that his girlfriend was right there in front of him, so there was no reason to go anywhere. She was so happy to hear that. She smiled and blushed. The man let out a heavy sigh, thinking about his sister Kibora. He apologized to his beloved for having to suffer because of his family's problems. Kan-jia said it was nothing, that she should actually apologize for sitting there on their first date with that kind of expression. He just smiled, poked a piece of food, and said she should eat. It tasted even better because it was given by the man she loved. Since it was so cute and romantic, she suggested they do the same, so she could feed him too. He didn't refuse. He took her hand and guided the fork to his mouth. The girl practically jumped. She was shocked. He also enjoyed the food even more because his beloved was feeding him. Later, they were served ice cream. The girl was thrilled, almost melting. It looked so pretty, she didn't even want to eat it. Kanjia decided to at least ask how much the dinner cost. When the man started adding it up, she got scared. And when he gave the full total, she was completely shocked. She thought it was unfair if he paid alone, so she suggested splitting it. The man said he'd already paid, so it was too late to think about that. He also reminded her about the ice cream, since it would melt. You know, she kind of forgot that they came from different worlds, probably because she'd been spending so much time with rich Bora. And now, the thought that this might all be a dream just wouldn't leave her. Could it ever really end? She sure hoped not. Suddenly, she jumped up and turned to Dr. Ki Tae-o. She promised him that while they were dating, she'd do her best not to let silly thoughts bother her. Basically, she didn't want to regret anything later. She also asked him to tell her if another girl came along, someone he might feel he had to or wanted to marry. The man promised he absolutely would. He intertwined their hands and said he had one request for Kanjia in return. The man kissed her hand and asked her never to listen to anyone else when it came to the two of them. He wanted her to trust only him, nobody else. She looked at him, enchanted and a little surprised. Then she smiled happily, her cheeks flushing, and she promised that from now on, she'd only listen to him. When the man drove her home, she gave him a kiss on the cheek before saying goodbye. They held hands like the happiest couple in the world. At first, they just silently looked at each other. Then she said she really enjoyed today's date, that she was glad they spent time together and talked about everything. The man replied that the feeling was mutual, gently cupping her cheek with his hand. After that, he pulled her close and kissed her forehead softly. Now both of them were blushing. She stood there while Ki Tae-o drove, and he could see her in the rearview mirror. She quickly got distracted when she heard someone behind her, a familiar voice asking what was going on. It was her brother, and she practically jumped seeing him there so suddenly. What was he even doing here so late? And he was standing there with such a smug expression. What a little troublemaker. He managed to freak her out for no reason at all. Who even does that? Anyway, they got home, later went to bed, and morning came. The main heroine yawned. Her little brother wished her a good morning, and her mom was cooking something. She asked why she didn't see her father. Mom explained that he had some important order, so he went to work early today. She sat at the table and said, "This is ridiculous. Calling someone to work this early. There must be some emergency for him to be up at this hour." Then her brother woke up. He happily sat at the table, saying breakfast looked amazing, really good. He sat next to the little brother, pointed to a spot on his cheek, and told him he had to give him a kiss there. It's hard to say why, but the first thing Kangjia remembered was kissing her beloved on the cheek yesterday. Probably her brother told the little one to do it on purpose, hinting that, yep, I saw everything. She suddenly coughed, and Mom, who had just sat down at the table, asked why he suddenly wanted a kiss. The teen said it was someone who taught him to do that. Before he could keep talking nonsense, she shoved a piece of food into his mouth, just to make him shut up. She said she loved her little brother a lot, so she decided he needed to eat more and talk less, just to stay healthy. The brother wasn't happy about having chopsticks shoved in his mouth, but the revenge was deserved. He didn't understand what was happening. He poked his tiny lips with a finger and asked about the kiss. A little later, while they were sitting in the living room eating apples, Mom shared that Dojin's mom had told her that the guy had found a girl for himself. Mom asked if Gia knew about this herself. She smiled and said she kinda did. Mom wondered if, theoretically, it could be her daughter, Kanjia, since they were close. Of course, the girl said, "No way. Nothing to do with Dojun, just friends. Mom sighed heavily, saying it was a shame Dojun wasn't her chosen one, because, in her opinion, he was #1 on the list of possible suitors. The main heroine couldn't deny that her friend was a really great guy, but that was exactly why they were just best friends. Mom said she understood, but wondered if it could be that her daughter already had someone. She pretended not to hear at first, then explained she didn't have time. She was, after all, a doctor. Relationships? What are those? Her brother, who had just walked into the kitchen, sarcastically said, "Exactly. Of course my little doctor sister doesn't have time for that." Mom looked at him and said it would be good if he drank milk from a glass, not like that. When the guy didn't listen, he got a scolding from his sister again, and he even choked a bit on the milk. The girl smiled and said that Mom asked him nicely to drink from a glass, but he didn't listen, so consequences. The guy fell to the floor coughing and told the girl she was treating him badly. She only loved Jamin. He wanted to tell Mom that she always teased him. Even just now, she hit him. But he didn't get the chance because she stopped him. She suddenly grabbed him by the neck and said she was just teaching him to behave. Go to lessons sometimes.